More.
Hi everyone, I am Debbie Jackson, owner, editor and publisher of That Leads Mag, and today I am talking to Toby Green, co-founder of My Carbon and a PhD researcher at Leeds University. Hi Toby.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. And lots of questions I want to talk to you about carbon, My Carbon, find out what it's all about, and
Awesome.
try and explain to the readers, what they could change in their lives to improve their carbon footprint.
Yeah, of course. Let's go for it.
Cool. So let's start with this question. What is your connection to Leeds, the greatest city in the world?
It really is, isn't it? If I was in the UK, there's nowhere else I'd like to live. I was born down south, and Leeds all the way. Leeds all the way. It's been I think I've been here 4 or 5 years now. 2016, September 2016 I moved. And I moved for the PhD at Leeds University. So I was undergraduate and master's in Loughborough. And then Loughborough's a very small town. You need to get out.
Okay.
And Leeds offered a PhD in bioenergy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I was really interested in, still am, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Leeds, never been to Leeds before, but loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Cool.
Loving it.
So just wanted to point out to the readers that Toby is wearing a mask because he's in his lab at the university at the moment, and that's protocol with COVID.
Yeah.
So,
I hope you can still hear me all right. I've got my microphone next to me.
Yeah, I've got you. It's cool. So
Perfect.
who are My Carbon?
So My Carbon is myself and the other co-founder, Michael Greenhoff, who is currently in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. We both did our undergraduate degrees together in Loughborough. We lived together. And we're both very passionate about sustainability. It's something we often talked about. We entered a competition for BP once, the petrol company, with the task of how to reduce the wastewater consumption in the oil and gas industry. And through that is where we came to, got to learn about bioenergy. Mm. And we decided to if we could use a saltwater algae and turn that into fuel, then you wouldn't need fresh water. So that's a bit about me and Michael.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I really started my PhD here in Leeds in bioenergy where I became increasingly aware of how individual behaviors can impact the environment.
Yeah.
And it was during that time where I really struggled to balance life's everyday activities with the need to live in a sustainable way. Mm-hmm. And that's where My Carbon came from. Okay. I feel that lots of people really care about the environment, but struggle to kind of incorporate it into their everyday lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we try and do is My Carbon is the easiest way for you to take responsibility for your own carbon footprint and then lead a carbon neutral lifestyle.
Which we all should be trying to do. Should. But carbon neutral is a phrase that gets used a lot, but what does it actually mean?
So carbon neutral it's different to net zero, because net zero is also a phrase that's talked about. So neutral is all about bringing you back to zero, essentially. If you're going around and you're driving, you're polluting, and through your diet or activities, that's all giving you emissions. And over the course of the year, in the UK, your average emissions is 12 tons of CO2 per year, and that's equivalent to about 40,000 filled CO2 balloons. So if you can try and envision that, it's a lot. No, sorry, one ton. 1 ton is equivalent to 40,000. So times that by 12.
Oh my God.
So it's a lot.
That's a lot of balloons.
So about carbon neutral, it's about bringing all them balloons back down to zero. And the only official way to do this is through carbon credits. It's through the purchase and retirement of a carbon credit. Now, one carbon credit is equal to the removal or the prevention of 1 ton of CO2 entering the atmosphere. And so there are projects, carbon projects, that create these carbon credits. And that could be a forestry project, it could be a renewable energy project, it could be carbon capture, or it could be something more energy efficiency.
So they're doing something like planting the trees, which reduces the carbon and therefore offsets the damage that we do.
Yes. So when it comes to something like a forestry project, it's all about, well, how much carbon is this forest taking into the out of the atmosphere, and then they sell that. They then sell these negative emissions as a carbon credit.
Gotcha.
And if I buy the carbon credit, I've purchased that negative emission.
And you're offsetting what you're doing.
Yeah, but the very important step is you have to retire the carbon credit, because a carbon credit it's a tradable commodity. It's like a stock or a share. You can buy and sell them; they go up and down in price.
Right. Okay.
So you have to retire these carbon credits. You have to purchase and retire them, which means that you have offset your carbon footprint.
So purchase it and use it, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
So that means because we retire them, it means we can never sell them on again.
No, because they're done.
Yeah. And it's also why carbon credits are very important, is because they're so heavily audited. It's not just planting trees, because there's lots of schemes out there that say, we'll plant a tree and offset your carbon footprint. That's not true. That's false advertising. They shouldn't be allowed to say this, because if you plant a tree, how do you know it's going to be there in 40 years time?
You don't.
You've got no idea. And as I've been tree planting with like the National Trust and whatnot, I've been back a year later and seen that half the work we did has been knocked down by animals, eaten, winds blown them over. There's so many things. Like growing trees is pretty hard.
There's a lot of variables in there.
There's a lot. So when people say they plant trees to offset their footprint, it's a great idea. But the reality is these trees may not grow up. There's that may. You don't know.
Yeah, and then they don't.
With a carbon credit, it's official. It has happened. That carbon has been removed out of the atmosphere.
So is there a government body or something that tracks this? Or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. It's just, I think you need to be aware of what you're looking for at the end of the day.
Okay. And my carbon are doing that.
Yeah, and there's also, again, getting into like a deeper level of it. And this is kind of where the public have a bit of mistrust about carbon credits, is about how they're created. There's different standards of carbon credit. Now, they all signify 1 ton of carbon removal, but it's kind of the same with all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. There are better and worse ones. So what we try and do is we have a diverse portfolio of our carbon credits. So we try and pick projects that we actually believe in, that we believe do the job of removing a ton of carbon dioxide, and that support climate issues in various ways. So renewable energy projects and forestry projects are ones that we believe in, really. So we take a lot of them. We're looking into now trying to get some actual carbon capture carbon credits, because that's the future. That's what we need, is this direct removal of carbon from the air. But they're much trickier.
So you're
new technology.
Looking quite carefully into the projects that My Carbon, work with.
Yeah.
So you're sort of taking care of that for your customers.
Yeah, exactly. We're not just trying to, pick whatever we can find. Yeah. It's, our first priority is carbon out of the atmosphere. Our second priority is what are the social benefits that this project has. Yeah. because like, you know, tree planting, you can look at biodiversity, you can look at wildlife, which is all fantastic. But we are in the business of taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So that is our number one role. You know, if you want to save the wildlife, there are so many other funds and ways to do that. But in terms of carbon, that's what we've got to look at as being number one.
Cool. So I've got, what is the highest carbon activity that we do as individuals? So what would I do? I mean, if I'm driving to work or if I'm going on holiday, what's the thing that's the worst?
There's two that I'd debate.
Yeah.
And depends how, I don't want to say bad, depends how much you emit. It's either you're flying and your diet.
Oh, okay.
So they're the two. So flying wise, so as I said, the UK average person is, if you take one economy flight, London to New York, six hours, that's 1 ton of CO2 that you're responsible for.
That's loads and loads more balloons.
That's loads and loads more balloons. And that's just one way, one flight. So a return is 2 tons. So if you go on holiday to New York, very nice. Can't at the moment.
No.
But that'd be 2 tons. And then, so, you know, that can add up over the course of the year. Fair enough if you're just flying around Europe and it's probably about 1/2 a ton each. But, you know, if you're going somewhere far away, like Australia, it can really add up in just one return journey. And then you've got the issue of, well, some people like to go economy plus or business class, first class. And because of the amount of extra space you use on the plane, the emission factor that is used to calculate your carbon footprint from your journey gets then doubled and then quadrupled.
Wow.
So if you're first class London to New York, you're looking at about 4 tons of CO2 for that one-way journey. One way. Wow. So 8 tons for a first class return journey.
I would never go first class anyway.
No.
But some people do.
Some people do, and
lucky people.
that's kind of the thing of, I don't want to stop people doing that per se.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we can't stop people doing
raise awareness to them of what they're doing, and then if they can, you know, if they can afford a first class flight, chances are they can probably afford to offset their carbon.
Exactly. So that's flying. As I said, it obviously depends on how much you do it. The less the better. The less the better. And it is from a personal point of view, it is mainly people going on holiday. And all I can say is, you know, have a look at trains. You know, if you go on holiday around Europe, it is again the expense of it. Ferry, you know, there are lots of ways of getting about Europe via train that isn't flying. So, you know, that is something I really recommend. Eurostar. You know, again, if you can afford it, you know, but it makes a much nicer journey. That's true. You rock up, no busy airports.
Yeah. So you mentioned food.
Yep, and your diet as well. So if we go with the average person, you know, about 2,000 calories a day, sort of average grocery shop. If you're someone who eats a lot of meat, and all of the meats, we're talking beef, lamb, pork, chicken, fish, all of that, your yearly emissions will be about 3.5 tons, around that, just from your diet alone, maybe a little under. Now, if you remove the beef and lamb, they're the biggest sources of emissions. So if you're sticking to your chicken, pork, fish, and then your veggies, that can cut right down, that can half it. So you're looking at maybe I think about 1.7 tons per year. Yeah.
That's a big difference.
If you cut out your beef and lamb.
Cut out the red meat.
Then if you go down to being a vegetarian, you're at about a 1.2.
Okay.
per year. And then if you're a vegan, you're looking at about 0.5 to 0.7 tons per year. Yeah, so it's a real big. So
eggs and some cheese.
But again, that's the thing. Like being vegan, it's quite hard to do, especially if you are a big meat eater.
Yes.
So in that situation, I'd just say try and reduce it a little bit. You know, if you're someone who loves meat is life. There's nothing wrong with that. We're human beings. We eat meat. I'm not here to preach to anyone, stop eating meat, be a vegan. No, just try having a little bit less.
Yeah.
You know, if you love beef and you really don't want to get rid of it, I'd say, for one, buy high quality beef. You know, buy it from your local butcher. You know where the cow is from. You know, it's a nice English cow that's been grown on the countryside, where it's not like it's, you know, caused deforestation some in Indonesia or in Thailand, because that's really a huge issue of these beef emissions, is that huge chunks of rainforest in Thailand, Indonesia, Brazil are being cleared for cattle that are being raised, you know, on factory scale.
In England?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that it's probably in places where you expect it a little bit less. So it might be more in your ready meals or in takeaways. Or
hidden,
so, you know,
I suppose, then, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you go to Tesco, you go to the beef aisle or whatnot, they often will say British beef or something.
Irish.
So so it's like, oh, okay, it's probably good, but you know, Ireland still have these huge cow factories, and it's where all these huge emissions. So that's why I say try and go local, because it's always better on the emission side. And it's likely if it's a local cattle farmer, he probably doesn't have the option to plant and grow crops.
Yeah, or he doesn't have the massive, you know, factory kind of cattle situation.
So it's all about eating a little bit less. So cut down beef to one time a week.
Yeah,
and then try and then cut it down to once a month. And again, like the savings you'll make by buying less, you can afford that nicer piece of meat. And the same with chicken. You know, if you're someone who doesn't eat beef already for whatever reason, then you can go to the next step and, you know, try incorporating a couple vegetarian meals into your diet, in your evening meals, once a week. And
so it's just
that
thinking a bit more about what you're buying and what you're eating, because it's, you know, the carbon it's not just when you're cooking it, it's the carbon of the process of that animal growing up, you know, being culled in whatever way, traveling to the UK, but then going through all the process of being put into a ready meal, you know, and then you know, it's everything that comes before that, and
that's
stuff we don't see. That's
it. So
why is it bad? I mean, why is our carbon, what's it doing? We have so much carbon in the world. Why is it bad? We need carbon to live.
It's not necessarily bad. It's not necessarily bad. And I get this on my Facebook comments all the time. Carbon is good. Carbon is life.
Yeah, we need carbon.
You're right. It is. You do. We need it for our plants, for photosynthesis. We need it in our soil. But there's too much of a good thing.
Okay.
And the point is, what's happening now is we're getting all this carbon that's locked up in our earth. And it's going up into our atmosphere. So all our earthly carbon is becoming stratospheric carbon.
Right.
And carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, as well as the 5 others. You've got methane, petrofluorocarbides, hexafluorocarbides, and hexasulfur fluoride.
Wow.
SF6. Yeah, that's a real nice one. These all have different global warming potentials.
You're doing a PhD.
So you got carbon dioxide has a global warming potential of 1. So that's why everyone talks about it, because it's kind of like the base. That is a 1.
Yeah.
Methane has a global warming potential of 21.
Right.
That means 1 ton of methane in the atmosphere is 21 times as worse than carbon dioxide. So that goes back to cattle, why everyone doesn't have cattle, because they produce so much methane, and all this methane under the ice that's melting and becoming atmospheric. That's why people are getting worried about it. The HFCs and the PFCs, quite a while ago, it was real big in the news with people's fridges, that they were emitting these gases, and aerosol cans that were emitting these gases. Their warming potential ranges from about a few hundred to a few thousand. So they're real nasty. And then there's the SF6, which has a global warming potential just under 24,000. And that's used in the electronics industry. So when you talk about your phones and your laptops and whatnot, what it takes to make them,
making those products,
when that gas is used, or is usually a byproduct, they have to work very hard to try and capture that so it doesn't go in the atmosphere. But what all these gases do is they act like a greenhouse, and they get a nice layer around our Earth. So that means when the sun's rays hit our Earth and reflect out, they can't get back out. Just like a greenhouse works, and it just keeps the planet warm, too warm. And that is what is slowly heating us up and is increasing. So I think we've hit the 1 degree increase in temperature. We're about to hit the 1.5 degree, and it's this 2 degrees that everyone's really trying their hardest to avoid now.
It makes lots of ice caps melt.
And it's making our ice caps melt. It's changing the weather, and it all rolls on as well. It all has a tipping point. So as the Earth gets hotter, ice melts quicker. As the ice melts quick, more methane gets released. It gets hotter. Ice melts even quicker.
Worse and worse.
Has that effect? You have horrendous hurricanes. You have these horrendous cyclones that are happening because all the weather patterns are being affected. I watched a very interesting documentary about how it's changing our farming, and all the dust is having an effect. And
you remember what that was called?
I looked at it this morning. It's Woody Harrelson narrates it on Netflix. I think hang on, Kiss the Ground. There you go.
Video. Kiss the Ground. There you are.
I'm back. Am I back?
Yeah.
Am I here now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kiss the Ground on Netflix by Woody Harrelson.
Cool.
It's very good.
What does that talk about?
It's all about the kind of the farming element.
Yeah.
And what we need to do with our land to help the fight against the climate crisis. So it's talking about, how all our land is just this dry, and we've just abused it due to farming. And it's about how actually we kind of need to go back a couple steps.
Okay, so if anyone's more interested in looking into that further, they can have a watch. And
yeah, it's really good. It's a bit different from your typical David Attenborough documentaries, which are golden, obviously.
Yes, obviously.
It's just a slightly different side on it. It talks about the importance of clouds and the importance of our ground and sort of what we can do, even as individuals, and like just the changes we can make.
Cool. So, how can I find out my carbon footprint?
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
If you go to mycarbon.co.uk,
all right, you
will be able to find our carbon calculator, and it takes you about 3 minutes to go through it. It's free, simple to use, no sign up is required, so you can just go onto it, tap away.
Put my information in.
Put your information in. That's right. We ask you questions about your home life. That's really about like your home energy bills. So we can calculate that. We ask you about your lifestyle. So we talk about your diet, your hobbies, how much just kind of what you do to kind of get a gauge of how much you're emitting there. And then we ask about your travel. So do you fly? Do you drive? Do you do you cycle? That sort of thing. So it takes about 3 minutes to do. And once you've done that, once you've gone through the calculator, you'll receive your answer. And then you kind of have three options there. So you'll have your carbon footprint, and you can either then just take it as it is, go away, carry on, make some changes to your lifestyle, come back, retake the test, and see if it gets any lower.
Yeah.
The option 2 is to enter in an email address at the end there, and that's where you'll receive a specific breakdown of your carbon footprint. And that way you'll be able to target which area of your life you actually want to try and reduce your carbon footprint in. So you may, the travel section may really shock you, and you're like, and then that might inspire you to cycle to work. Something along those lines. Option number 3 is to sign up to our offsetting service, where you can become carbon neutral. And on top of that is where you'll get personalized advice on how to reduce your carbon footprint. So I'll review all of your answers, and I'll give you personalized advice specifically to you on what steps you should take to slowly begin to reduce your carbon footprint. And it's nothing where I'm going to say, stop driving, stop flying, stop eating. It's all targeted to make these small, simple changes step by step that will get you down and to reduce just where you can.
Yeah. Because we're all going to use carbon. There's nothing we can do. We're never.
There's nothing you can do. Not unless you live like a caveman.
Yeah. Your own vegetables. Everything.
Well, you wouldn't even be allowed to attach to the national grid. You can have anything because everything's made.
Yeah.
It's very, 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 very difficult to produce nothing.
Yeah, I see what you mean. There sort of is a carbon footprint. I was thinking it's got nothing to do with my feet, but it is stuff you're doing to the world, bringing the carbon back down. To stop what's going on with the atmosphere.
That's right.
Greenhouse effect. That's cool.
Yeah.
So the small changes in our daily life, if we go onto your app, we can have a look, and it'll give us some direction.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool then. Everything. I think that's a big education for me. And that's a big education for our readers as well. Brilliant.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you for your time, Toby. Have a nice
Brilliant.
day in the lab.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll see you later.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
More.